What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am, of course, your host who does the most, Ethan Smith. I hope you all are having a phenomenal beginning to your March, as I am over here. And it's a very, very fun day for the game of baseball, as meetings were going on for over 17 hours yesterday about the collective bargaining agreement. And we have a lot to go over today. The CBA negotiations, of course, ramped up a lot, and the deadline was supposed to be yesterday, but they've extended it to 5 p.m. Eastern time today, so try to listen to this before that deadline, even though deadlines appear to be arbitrary at the current moment. But, of course, if you do not know, my name is Ethan Smith. I am your host who does the most here at the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am also now a writer for Bucks in the Basement. I also do a bunch of other stuff, too, for the Just Good Sports Network, and thank you for making me your first listen of the day every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. And with all that said, we have a lot of stuff to get into today with the collective bargaining agreement stuff. So let's have a fun episode, guys, and let's get right into it.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everyone, back to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I'm, of course, your host who does the most, Ethan Smith, and you can see I'm sharing my screen today with good old Bobby Nightingale over here on the Twitter feed. As I scroll down a little bit, you're going to see some stuff, but we are going to go ahead and we're going to be going back and forth a little bit so I could see you guys, you could see me. But CBA negotiations are in full force today. Of course, the CBA negotiations have ramped up, so we're going to pull up some stuff here from Mr. Bob Nightingale, who had a very interesting evening yesterday, doing stuff all over the place for the Locked On family's pleasure as well as our pleasure. And I mean, you see right here that the new deadline for the season was set to 5 p.m. to avoid delaying the start of the season. And a lot of the stuff that happened yesterday was very, very crucial into what we needed to see from these owners. It was just absolutely phenomenal stuff. And, you know, seeing the CBT go up, seeing the Super 2 go away, there's a lot of different things that happened here. And as you can see, 13 rounds of negotiations yesterday. The 16-hour mark was reached, almost 17 hours as well. You had these fans waiting outside of the stadium. This was just absolutely phenomenal stuff to see. And, of course, as this is kind of the one that got me a little bit, was that there still needs to be significant progress made here with these CBA negotiations. And you look at where the sides stand right now and what was agreed upon, as we have seen some of Bobby Nightingale, and I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen and come back fully with you guys. Realistically, you have to look at it from the standpoint right now that the CBA was on thin ice for a hot minute. It really was. I mean, the players and the owners didn't meet for a very long time. And there was a lot to talk about. There really was, and we're going to talk about some of that today. And one of the first things that was actually agreed upon yesterday that I really wanted to get into before we get into some of the more thick stuff was the 12-team playoff pool being agreed upon by the players and the owners. It originally was 14. I believe that's what the owners wanted, so that would have been 7 aside. But we do get 6 playoff teams on each side now, so an extra playoff team will be added to the fray for the MLB postseason, which is very interesting to me, by the way. It's a very interesting concept to see extra teams be added. I thought 7 teams was a little bit too much. If you want to go check out the Pirates fan forum from a couple weeks ago, we talked about the 14 playoff format. It's going to be the same deal. The Pittsburgh Pirates, of course, will probably not be involved in this postseason in its first year of existence here for Major League Baseball, but also I think it's going to be a little fun. The division winners will get to choose who they play. The last division winner will not, as the first 2 will get to choose who they play, and the third will play whoever is left. I think it's going to be very fun. I think it's going to offer a lot of intrigue in the matchups, how the matchups are chosen. If the 5 or 6, say if the 5 seed has a major injury going on, not to wish injury on anyone, but say if the 5 seed has a major injury going on and the 6 seed is fully healthy or around fully healthy near the end of the year, a 1 or 2 seed may be compelled to play the better team with the injury rather than playing the 6 seed. You could see that happen. But I do think this is good for baseball. I was in a Twitter space yesterday, and we were talking about a lot of different things about this. And there's a lot of fan bases across baseball that don't get to see the postseason very much. The Pittsburgh Pirates have been one of those. You can name the Kansas City Royals, the Miami Marlins, the Cleveland Guardians even though they were in the World Series not too long ago. Even the Washington Nationals, World Series champions, have not been in the playoffs as often as you really think, despite winning that World Series just a few years ago as well. So it would be nice to see some more fan bases included in the postseason. I think that will definitely help the game grow. And if you guys want to say that baseball is a dying sport, I know if you tune into this podcast, you still have a very, very big interest in baseball, and as do I. I think we all do. But seeing that baseball is being called a dying sport, after seeing last night where I was in a Twitter space with over 3,000 people yesterday, hosted by Draftneck Mark, go check him out. And then I, of course, hosted my own Twitter space with about 30 people. I mean, baseball, in a way, yes, is a dying sport, but also with the amount of stuff that was happening today, and yesterday and last night, that's going to happen today. I mean, people are glued to their TVs right now. They're glued to social media. They're glued to whatever Jeff Passan has to say. They're glued to all of that right now, and it's absolutely phenomenal for the game of baseball. I just wish they would have did this days, weeks, or even months ago, but at the end of the day, at least we're getting it here. And I already mentioned that deadline before, by the way. The deadline has been set for 5 p.m. today to not delay baseball games beginning on March 31st. Of course, near the end of the month, the Pittsburgh Pirates are still slated to play the St. Louis Cardinals to open their 2022 season. As of right now, that is still on the cards. The games have not been postponed as of yet. But does a deadline really matter? I mean, we saw this yesterday. They said the deadline originally was yesterday, and talks went into about 2:30, 2:45 before Jeff Passan and some other major sport or beat writers for Major League Baseball tweeted and said, okay, they're done for tonight. They're going to go into tomorrow, and the deadline has been extended. Who's to say that doesn't happen again later today? Who's to say that we don't get yet another deadline set for 5 p.m. and it's 6:30 and they're still talking? I mean, that's probably more than likely going to happen. Tons to talk about here with the CBA today. Tons to talk about. But before we get into the rest of it, I want to let you guys know about the wonderful people over at BetOnline. BetOnline, of course, is where the game starts. And, you know, football might be over, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fire coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your .net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. And BetOnline, of course, is where the game starts. Now, we're going to get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of this stuff. Now, the MLB Luxury Tax Proposal, very interesting. I'm going to pull it up on my phone here. And, you know, it's going to be an interesting one. So the MLB Luxury Tax Proposal, of course, went up a pretty considerable amount. It is currently at $210 million. Under this MLB Luxury Tax Proposal, 2022 would be $220 million in the next following 3 years. So that would mean 2022, 2023, and 2024, the luxury tax would increase by $10 million for those 3 years and stay consistent. Then it would go up by $4 million in 2025 and $6 more million in 2026, up to $230 million. Now, why is this important? Well, if the luxury tax increases, players can be paid more. You look at a guy like Juan Soto, who just turned down a 13-year, $350 million contract from the Washington Nationals. This is exactly why he did that. is because if this proposal is indeed true and it does get passed off, it's going to be interesting because then you're going to see these guys get paid a lot more, and the younger or the lower players, of course, who still want higher minimum contracts, which I'm sure is going to be talked about today, as I believe the players, as I am recording, have just met once again. That's going to be very interesting to see how this affects the smaller minimum players, because those are the guys that this is really affecting in the end. If games are missed, and I talked about this last week with Adam, you look at the Pirates, for example, with a lot of the younger players that they have, like a Roenzi Contreras and an O'Neill Cruz and Leover Peguero, all these guys that were just added to the 40-man roster. If games are missed, they cannot play because they are on the 40-man roster, which in turn means they do not get paid for those games missed. Now, that's very important because then, obviously, this MLB Luxury Tax Proposal gets into a lot of different things, is teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Red Sox can spend more money, but also if the Pirates eventually want to go into that threshold, which right now, according to the tax rates are going to remain the same. So 20%, 32%, 62.5%. Those are going to be the tax rates for the last CBA that would carry over to this one alongside with that luxury tax increase. So that's really going to be effective for the Pirates as well, because eventually when they start to compete, if they want to spend some money, that threshold is going to stay the same, but the money will be higher. Now, I'm not saying the Pirates are going to spend that much money, because it's probably never going to happen, but for other teams that may be like that, like a Detroit Tigers team or a Texas Rangers team that have clearly wanted to spend money this offseason, this is huge for them if it does come to that. Now, of course, the luxury tax proposal is just a proposal. It is not really that big yet. I'm not sure if it was really agreed upon as of yet either. But if we continue to look through other things that were also agreed upon, the Super 2 class has been dropped. That is one thing that was very important. Now, of course, for those of you who do not know what the Super 2 is in baseball, it's a very complicated concept, so we're going to go ahead and explain it to you directly from the horse's mouth from MLB.com as I pull this up real quick. So the definition of the Super 2 is players who typically must accrue 3 years of Major League service time with 1 year of service time equaling 172 days on the 25-man roster or the Major League injured list, and they can become eligible for salary arbitration. Super 2 is a designation that allows a select group of players to become eligible for arbitration before reaching 3 years of service time. So, Super 2 is very interesting because when you're looking into this, there's a lot of examples of it across MLB history where you see that guys were put on Super 2. Now, to qualify for this Super 2 designation, though, players must rank in the top 22% in terms of service time among those who have amassed between 2 and 3 years in the majors. Typically, this applies to players who have 2 years and at least 130 days of service time, although the specific cutoff date varies on a year-to-year basis. So, for an example here, Dexter Fowler completed the 2011 season with 2 years and 168 days of Major League service time, which made him one of the leaders in service time among players who had between 2 and 3 years in the majors. Thus, the outfielder qualified as a Super 2 player and was eligible for arbitration. He went through arbitration 4 times before reaching free agency in the 2015 season, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of gives you an idea of what Super 2 is kind of like. So, in Pirates terms, say O'Neill Cruz comes up and gets the service time that he needs in under that 3-year mark. He could qualify for arbitration earlier. Now, they have dropped Super 2. That is the thing. So if we're talking about that in terms of what it means for it to be dropped, the Super 2 is a very interesting concept in the fact that it kind of is arbitration manipulative, and it dropped. So this is the thing. They didn't drop it officially. It was just dropped from the proposal. And the union, that was the union that did that. That is increasing the Super 2 class. That was what was going on there. And so increasing it would mean probably moving it quicker. That's what I would think. Or increasing the time of year or the years played to do so. Arbitration for me especially arbitration manipulation, has always been a pretty big deal in terms of what it really does for teams. But also at the end of the day, you have to realize that it really, at the end of the day, messes with things. Because you have players like a Brian Reynolds right now who I've stated on this podcast multiple times deserve to be extended after an all-star season. But why would the Pirates extend him when he's on arbitration for the next 2 or 3 years? There's really no need to do so. So I know that's been a big deal for the players as well, is trying to bring that arbitration number down, because you've seen the stories already about guys who sit in the minors for 4 or 5 years, and then they come up to the majors, they get their service time, they're on arbitration for another 4 years, and then they don't hit free agency until they're like 33. That is a major problem. Juan Soto right now is probably the biggest outlier to that problem right now, because yes, he is on arbitration at the current moment, but he will be a free agent when he's 26. He'll still be in his prime. That doesn't happen for a lot of guys. A lot of guys might not even get to the majors until they're 26. It's just one of those wild things that I think MLB definitely still needs to touch on. But if we're looking at the negotiations right now and where everything has happened, this is a very promising thing for baseball. And I will get more into that here in a second about the promising parts of this, because, again, before we get into this, though, and before we go to a quick ad break, I don't want them to just agree on a deal that doesn't benefit the players at all. I want them to agree on something that helps the players on top of also helping fix the product of baseball. Now, are they trending towards that right now? I believe so. I think they are trending towards that with expanding the luxury tax a little bit, expanding some of that stuff as well. I think they're moving towards that goal. I think that is a great goal to have right now. And I think that they can improve on some more things. But also, if you want baseball back like me, a deal is going to be what needs to happen. Now, if they miss games, that's where it's going to get interesting. Now, of course, before we get into that, though, I want to let you guys know about the best protein bars on the planet, and that is Built Bar. Built Bar, of course, is the best tasting protein bar on the planet. And, of course, all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, I said 100% real chocolate. They are all low calorie and high protein. Make sure you replace your candy bars with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. When you go to the BuiltBar.com macros chart, most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar and net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream are just some of the flavors that Built Bar has to offer. And if you go to BuiltBar.com right now, you can get a mix box which features 9 of the unique Built Bar flavors for you to try, so you get 2 apiece. And if you think a flavor might be good, they'll make it. It will be delicious and it will be good for you. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every time. Go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off of your order when you invest in the best protein bars on the market. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to RockAuto.com at home and in your pocket. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every single customer, and they have everything you can need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That is rockauto.com. Now again, Twitter was in a frenzy yesterday with all this stuff, for rightfully so. Very fun times here at the Locked On Podcast Network, where we are hopefully getting baseball back today. We've already missed some spring training games, but again, are talks moving in the right direction? I think so. I think they really are, but at the end of the day, we do need to educate ourselves on some things about which reporters are there for the players, which reporters are there for the owners, which reporters are there for the middlemen, and you have to read into all this stuff from this is what is being told to the reporters by whoever they're getting the information from. So some of this stuff could be way off. They could get a deal. Next thing you know, the luxury tax is not what it looked like at all as it was reported. It happens. But at the end of the day, there's been a lot of interesting caveats to this. Rob Manfred said the prospect of missing games for baseball would be catastrophic. Yet, your self-imposed deadline was already met. You already passed it. You're still negotiating today. Now, of course, as I mentioned before, the deadline is 5 p.m. today. Does that deadline really matter? Like I've already stated before, you're going to see, I guarantee this is going to happen. It's going to get around 5 o'clock, but it's going to be very interesting to see how the players and the owners react around that 5 o'clock window. Because if they keep talking, that deadline's going to get pushed back again. So does that deadline really matter? No, it's arbitrary. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the slightest. Realistically, the players and the owners last night had the best bargaining session that they had the entire time of this lockout. They met for 17 hours. It's a very long time. And they had a lot of energy, apparently, based off of the reports that I saw. There was a lot of good conversation. They got moving forward a little bit. I say a little bit, though, because there's still some work to be done. They have a lot of work to get done today, guys. A lot. They still have some things to figure out. Do they figure them out? Let's hope so. Let's hope that it benefits the players, too. Because let's hope it benefits both sides. I don't want to just say it's on the owners. The players have some things they want, too. But at the end of the day, the players have just grown fed up with not being paid enough and not being compensated enough for playing 162 games. Now, something that I do think could happen with this season is if they want to not cancel games, I think they could delay games. Now, what does this mean? The season is supposed to start on March 31st. So March 31st, of course, being a Thursday, that is supposed to be the beginning of the Major League Baseball season. Could it very well be April 7th? We just move the games back a week. Play 162 games, just move them back a week. Could you see that happening? Because I could. Okay, maybe even say just go to the 11th, so Monday. Start the season on a Monday. Or even just push it back 2 days or whatever and start the weekend or start the season on a weekend. Start it on Friday. Whatever. That's a very possible thing that could happen here. There's a lot of possibilities in the cards at the current moment of things that could happen here. A lot. You could see a deal get done by the time I finish recording this podcast. You could be seeing games be delayed and canceled. You could see the season start on time. But one of the things that I also want to mention too is whenever this CBA is signed, those next 2 or 3 days after that, boy, free agents are going to sign left and right and center and southwest and southeast and everywhere. They're going to sign everywhere. And Ben Cherington has already said he wanted to add a pitcher. I'm sure he knows who it is already. In all honesty, I'm sure Freddie Freeman knows where he's already going. Carlos Correa probably knows where he's already going. There's a lot of big names still left on the market. Nicholas Castellanos, another big name still left on the market. Kenley Jansen, Clayton Kershaw, Carlos Correa, Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, Trevor Story, all have still not signed contracts anywhere. They are still free agents in the game of baseball. So whenever this is done, content's going to be flying across everything because you're going to see guys sign very quickly. These agents are going to want to get these guys signed, especially if the season starts, because guess what? They got to get to spring training and get ready. Sure, they've been getting ready for the season, but they haven't been able to use a team facility to do so because they're not on a team. So it's going to be very fun. everybody take a deep breath. Let's hope that it's going to be a very interesting day for baseball. Listen to this podcast before you go to Twitter and look at all of the updates from Bob Nightingale, Jeff Passan, Evan Drillich, all the writers down there in Jupiter, Florida. Fun caveat, this is also the last day that meetings can be held in Jupiter, Florida. So if meetings do not end today, they're going to have to do these elsewhere. That's going to be fun, right? Anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in to the Locked On Pirates podcast. You guys are amazing. I appreciate you all so much for tuning in and making me your first listen of the day every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan and, of course, follow the show at Locked On Pirates. We are going to be back at you tomorrow, maybe either with some huge CBA news or talking about the bullpen and how it stacks up in the NL Central, how it stacks up and how it can improve on a 2021 season that was up and down, and how Oscar Marine can help this bullpen get better in the long run. Guys, until then, I will see you tomorrow. Hope you all have a phenomenal Tuesday, March 1st. Hope we get a deal signed. Hope it helps the players and the owners. And until then, I will see you on the flip side.